Outside of our borders is a dark place, a scary place. America is the light.
Benghazi's been a four-letter word for the left, but it's not about politics. Benghazi was about opportunities.
And how can you defeat an enemy you cannot even name?
He was murdered by radical Islamic terrorists.
It's all about priorities, I suppose. Still would have been nice to see some American flags on the DNC stage before they were shamed into placing them there on Tuesday, day 2. Joining me now, former Green Beret and author of Game Changers, Scott Mann. Scott, thanks for being with me tonight.
Hi, Tommy. Thanks for having me on.
So, Scott, in your book, you explain that our terror policy, or lack thereof, could actually be helping the enemy. How so?
Yeah, well, for the last 10 years, I mean, the longest war in our nation's history, we've actually tried to project from the top down, liberal democracy, Western forms of warfare, interstate warfare on a society largely tribal, that's clannish, that really has no use for that style of governance or development. And what it's actually done is it's actually pushed those populations that we need to mobilize away from us and into the waiting arms of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We haven't taken the time to really understand not only the nature of the threat, but where this threat lives and thrives. Instead, we just try to fight it the way we want to fight it instead of what local realities really are.
And I understand that as well. I mean, it would seem so. It's hard from an outside perspective for those that live in Western nations, those that are used to democracy, to picture that part of the world and not understand how they don't understand why democracy would be good for them. But in large part, it doesn't seem as though they do. Do you think, as someone that's experienced it time and time again, that people in the Middle East, those in Arabic countries, would like to see democracy thrive in those regions?
Sure. I think over time, I think democracy is a very noble objective. But the problem with it is that we've tried to start with that. I mean, frankly, I was underwhelmed, and I fought under both administrations, the Bush and the Obama administration, and was really kind of underwhelmed by both, Tommy, because I don't think we really took the time to understand how ISIS and Al-Qaeda and these other groups are manipulating these local populations. When we go in and we say, hi, I'm from the Afghan government, how do you like me so far? These folks don't trust the government in the first place, and we're over-investing in these corrupt governments that, frankly, don't resonate at a local level. What we did start doing late in the war was Green Berets and others going out and helping tribes and clans stand up on their own. They are a great antibody to extremism. Communities that stand up against these guys, whether that's in Detroit or whether that's in Sunni Iraq, are very effective, and ISIS and Al-Qaeda are very scared of this approach.
But what bothers me, though, is it seems as when we train, the moderate opposition as they are, we train the Kurds, we train any of these groups that we would think would be on our side, that we think would be pushing back against ISIS or Al-Qaeda. It seems, though, in 6 months later, or even a few years later, or even 6 years later, they turn on us, and all of a sudden they become our new enemies. And therefore, all this time we've been training them, we've been arming them, we've been spilling our blood to help them. And it doesn't seem like there's any allegiance to our cause, to democracy, to freedom. It seems that they flip on the turn of a dime.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. But I think one of the things that we've got to undo, and I talk about, in changing the game in my book, is that we've got to look at our whole perception of time. If you think about it, Tommy, look at Colombia, Guatemala, the Philippines. We have a pretty good track record, actually, of working from the bottom up to help countries get back on their feet and push back against extremism and tyranny. But you know what? It takes a long time. And a lot of these groups, we're going to have to live and work and operate in these areas for a very long time. But, most folks don't even know that we've had Green Berets working in rural Colombia for like 3 decades. Folks don't even pay attention to that. But we have, and it works. And look at where Colombia is today versus the 90s.
But Scott, I have
we
to
know
ask
how to
you,
do
it seems like a different situation, though. I think that, and nobody likes to say it, but I think Islam plays a large role in this. I think it's an ideological war, whereas every other war we've ever fought, whether it be World War II, whether, you're talking about our occupations in Colombia or in South America, anywhere else in the world, it seems as though it hasn't been an ideological war. It's been a nation state fighting a nation state. Here, it seems that we're fighting an idea, and I will go ahead and say it seems as though we're fighting a large portion of the Islamic faith that seems to hate Christianity, seems to hate Judaism, seems to hate all the religions that are not Islam, and that's why I find it almost impossible to be able to change these communities when there's so many differences rooted in religion.
I think the argument that Islam plays a role is obviously a valid argument, and it makes a lot of sense, and it's something we've got to take on the narrative level, which is probably we would need another interview for that one to talk about the idea of narrative. But here's the thing. What I do know is that there are tens of thousands of tribes and clans around the country that do not, around the world that don't like ISIS or their extremist views, and they're willing to stand up against them and fight them. And if we don't go into these areas and mobilize those pragmatic, practical moms, dads, and grandmothers to stand up against these extremists, you can bet that ISIS and Al-Qaeda are going to come into the shadows and they're going to pull that thread. So we're basically ceding sanctuary to these folks if we don't go in there. And I do think while we don't agree ideologically, there are a lot of connection points that locals will stand up. We've just seen it too many times in Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the Obama administration has just glossed over it.
I think you're right. I think, though, so many people are frustrated with the notion of nation building. I think that you can't nation build in the time that we've been there. We saw Obama take a dramatic drawdown. I don't think that helped the efforts whatsoever. But, you know, it's election season. We'll see who our next commander-in-chief is to be. Hope to God it's not Hillary. Scott, thanks for being with me tonight.